So today over lunch, I'm going to teach you guys some valuable lessons about money, how to save it, what to spend it on, or how to spend it, how not to spend it. We're going to talk about a car accident I got into and how that really just changed the way that I did business. So we also get to talk about what I drive. What does a millionaire drive with all the money that they have, and why? So with that said, let's jump right into it. All right, so here's a good one. What kind of car do you drive? Well, that's kind of a fun question. I didn't know it mattered. Well, for your information, I drive a Honda Civic. And how can we give you something with that? Where's the lesson to be learned here? Okay, so I didn't always drive a Honda Civic. In fact, okay, so when I first started my media company, that's like my first company, right? As soon as I started making a good amount of money, I bought a Mercedes AMG 6.3 liter engine convertible black, right? Fun, right? I'm like, I made it. Here's my car. And I really enjoyed that car. I whipped around everywhere, drove too fast, I remember some of my favorite memories actually was I was outside of Corpus Christi, Texas, near Kingsville, driving with the top down while I was working in the Corpus Christi area. Really good memories. But I crashed that car because I'm an idiot, or I was at like 24, 25. And so as punishment, I bought a hoopty. I bought the Mercedes cash, right? Because I believed at the time that you don't finance anything unless you have good reason to. And that's we'll talk about that too, the financing things and why. We'll talk about that later in this video. But I bought a hoopty, like a cash car, as punishment for the fact that I couldn't be responsible with nice things. So for about 6 months, I drove around this like heavily used, like old Cadillac ST or CTS that I bought for like $5,000 bucks. I didn't buy another nice car until that summer because I was about to go on a date, and I felt like I needed something that I could pick somebody up on a date for. So I bought a Jaguar XJL Super Sport. I also paid cash for that car too, because again, don't finance if you don't have to and don't have a good reason to. So that was my car. I drove it around like to Dallas, to Jackson, Mississippi, to Miami. I would drive overnight from Houston to Florida to work on my business. I'd work all day in Houston, drive all night, and then work all day in South Florida. And this was my rhythm. So fall of 2016, I get hit from behind. Somebody goes, it was like going 90 miles an hour. Me and my employee were driving down the road in Jackson, Mississippi, and we get slammed into from behind by this girl in like a Hyundai. And so at 90 miles an hour, the car is so heavy that all you felt was like this big thunk, right? Just like that. I remember that. Neither of us were injured. And then I looked in my rear view, and there's this Hyundai that was all, like bunched up like an accordion, like swerving, and ends up off the road. She was okay too, just obviously she felt bad about hitting us. So she hit the car hard enough that she bent the frame of this XJL Super Sport, and I got an insurance cash out. And so when I crashed my Mercedes, I actually got more back than I paid for it. So that was the cool thing about back then, is I paid cash for this used Mercedes, and the insurance check was bigger than I paid for the car. That was a huge win. And I had the car for like a year and some months, so that was a good buy. But when this insurance check for the Jaguar hit, I was like, oh, I could buy another nice car again. This car accident wasn't my fault, whatever. And so I decided though, I turned the corner in business at this point. So when I arrived to this decision, I'm like, well, instead of buying another like super nice car and experience the depreciation of the car again, like I did with this Jaguar, I decided to take $18,000 of it, and I bought that Honda Civic. I then took the rest of the money and I invested that check into like 3 apartments worth of furniture. So I set up 3 new apartments in this high rise, got all the furniture for them. And that was really the beginning of our expansion with Airbnb. Because like I said in past videos, we really dropped the hammer on growth after the Super Bowl. February 2017 was like a moment that we knew that we wanted to have property for. So the goal was to get 10 properties by the Super Bowl in February 2017. So right around then, like October, November of 2016, we started to get more properties. And so essentially what I did is I took this terrible situation where somebody wrecked my favorite car at the time, and forced me to buy a new car. And instead of it becoming a negative situation, I turned it into a positive. I bought a more responsible car that cost half as much money for gas, and bought 3 apartments worth of furniture, and started to grow the Airbnb business. So that's really what you can take from this, is you don't have to buy a nice car, right? You don't have to show your money. If instead of buying that Jaguar when I went on that date, to end up dating a girl that it didn't work out anyway, right? Wasted money on dates and spending money, because I guess that was the stage of my life I was in, is I was just now making a lot of money, and I felt like I needed to show it, and I was leading with that in my relationships with people and blowing an unnecessary amount of money in my mid-20s. If I took all of that money and would have been investing in real estate at the age of 24, 25, man, I can tell you, I must have blown 6 figures easy on dinner in just a few years, of probably less than a few years. You give it, what was my food budget back then? I was probably spending $600 to $1,000 a week on food and entertainment. There was a time in my life, actually back then, there's a time I was spending $500 a day on being social and having fun and buying really expensive lunches and then really expensive dinners, and I'd always pay the tab for my friends. And that's something that I guess I still do to this day, because I'm constantly picking up the check, because I was super poor when I was young, super, super poor. I remember when I was 16, I wanted to retire making $50,000 a year. That was my goal. If I'm 65 and I retire at a nice job and I was making $50K a year by the time I retire, that would have been me making it. That was my ambitions at 16. So I had a factory job when I was 18. I worked 3rd shift overnight at this factory that made toilet parts, and I was making $14 an hour, except when I was working overtime. So I was working 70 hours a week, sometimes making $28 an hour when I was getting double overtime on Sundays. So I had $1,000 a week checks. I already was making $1,000 a week, which is $50,000 a year at the age of 19, where I thought I was going to have to be 50 or 60. So ever since 19, I've been picking up checks, buying people lunch, buying people dinner, just kind of spending money, and that was the way that I show love and the way that I show that I care for my friends. That was it. So that whole $500 a day, wasting money essentially, picking up the check at lunch and dinner with all my buddies, that wasn't to be flashy. It's a habit instilled in me to pick up the check. If you have more money than somebody, you buy lunch. That's kind of how I've been. So if we take that lesson learned here and rewind and take every time that I did that, which I wouldn't trade that for the world, but you take all the times that I did that and all that irresponsibility financially, you could buy a house cash in 2 years with all that extra money. So take the car as an example. This was one big decision. Instead of me making micro decisions to save $100 here or there 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times a week, I had made one decision to take an extra 20, 30 grand and just put it into real estate instead of buying another car. So I took a step back, I let my ego take a step back in life and say, I'm going to drive a responsible car, and I'm going to start to behave responsibly. I'm going to stop making flashy decisions, and instead I'm going to make, long-term decisions. And this really can be summarized well with this book. It's a short one called The Richest Man in Babylon. Essentially, it's about how it doesn't matter how much money you make. If there's a hole in your purse, you keep no money. And there's a hole in my purse at that age. And then I stitched it up, and I started to follow the principles of The Richest Man in Babylon. And let your money make you money, reinvest that money, and let that money make you money, and then reinvest that money, and then you can spend the dividends of your 3rd generation of income. It makes sense? So now let's get on to that last point that I promised. I said that we'll talk about financing things. Back then, I did not understand the principles of working capital. When you're good at something and you have money, you put that money to work and you get a return on investment from that money. It's a combination of your expertise and your finances. A lot of people, they think of investing money like putting into the stock market, which I lost my shirt trying to do that. And they expect that you're going to make 5 to 10% on your money. But when you have smaller amounts of money, like say you have less than $1 million to play with, or less than 500,000 or 250,000 or something, right? You have smaller amounts of money that you can't just institutionally invest. You should invest that in line with where your expertise is. So if you take money that you can govern and control, you can get a return on investment with that money based on your skill sets. So, for example, with Airbnb, if you know a lot about short-term renting and this is your thing that you get good at, you can invest your money $5,000 at a time and make $800 a month for your $5,000 investment forever, right? So you can make, what is that, $4,800 a month in profit year over year for a $5,000 investment. But that's not just investing your money, that's combining it with your expertise. So If you can do that with money you have, and then you can go finance and you pay 10% of that money, well then let's look at the math here. You have $50,000. You put it to play and you make $50,000 a year on $50,000. Then you borrow $50,000 and you pay $5,000 in interest on that money as you pay it back. You come ahead $45,000. And that's fuzzy numbers because, of course, how much money you pay in interest goes away over time as you pay down your debt, etc. So, and the total lifetime cost of that, if you have a 5-year loan where you're paying 10% annually, you're definitely paying more than $5,000 on that money. But still, the point is, if you can double your money and then borrow money at a very small interest rate, then at this point, I guess what I'm saying is, yes, I'd finance a car. And I would buy a nice car again if I wanted to. Because I can take my money and I can double it. I can actually thank you. All right, so to button that up, what I'm saying to you now is, since I know how to use money to make more money than the interest on a loan would be, I feel confident taking cash, putting it into work, and then borrowing money for things that I want to buy. So get to the point that you can combine your brain and your finances to achieve some sort of end that beats the market. Then put your money to work and borrow money for whatever you need to buy. But that's not a license to kill to buy unnecessary stuff. I've been driving this Honda since fall of 2016, turning into 2017. So it's going to be 3 years that I've driven this Honda, and I've been beating the market, making triple my money per year for 3 years now. But I'm still not going out and buying a nice car yet. That may change here in the near future. But my point here is, learn to invest your money in yourself. Invest in yourself educationally speaking, and then learn to invest your money in yourself. Combine forces, you or your brain and your money, and that's going to beat the market. And that's how you're going to eventually become wealthy. And then down the road, after your money's reinvestments are making enough money, you can then spend it on things that you want. But if you buy too many fun things, it's going to slow you down financially, because every dollar that you spend on something you didn't need is another dollar that you cannot invest in your future. Capiche? All right, so with that said, thanks for having lunch with me. If you have any questions, you want to talk about something else in this ballpark, feel free to leave it in the comments. And if you like this kind of stuff, subscribe, because I'll be here sending more videos to you this way. And of course, leave me a like. Thanks for watching this video, and I will see you on the other side.